가시동굴 속에 피어난 하얀 박물고 그 어디 있어도 내 고향 꽃향기 안고 피네.
Hey yo, what's up fellas? I'm here with Revolutionaryth0t again, my favorite fucking content creator on YouTube. They make really fucking excellent videos about Soviet culture, cartoons, and just topics in society in general, like disability. You want to introduce yourself?
I feel like you probably introduced myself better than I could. Yeah.
And you,
I make content. I make YouTube videos.
And then you've been on this show before, and if you haven't seen that episode, check it out. And I just brought Revolutionaryth0t over here today, since they already talk about media and relating to socialism, to talk about Squirrel and Hedgehog, which is a 1977 produced North Korean or DPRK cartoon. It's a children's cartoon, and it's just really interesting and fun. And since, already talking about Anastasia, what better guests to get on for this? You got anything else to say?
No, nothing I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't mention to you before we watched that cartoon was Squirrel and Hedgehog actually has a cult following within the American furry community. I think you could tell why. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and it's still made today. It's still made today. We watched the first two episodes of the series that were made in the 1970s, but it's still going on strong today. So before we begin this episode, I'll give like a really, really brief introduction to Korean history, and I'll give you some resources that you could check out, because this episode is not going to be about Korean history in general, but Korea was colonized by the Japanese as of the up until the 1945, where North Korea was liberated by the Soviet Union and South Korea was put under American control. In North Korea, people's committees would popularly elect Kim Il-sung and turn North Korea into a Marxist-Leninist society. Kim Il-sung was just as popular in South Korea. And in fact, there was a short-lived Republic of Korea that was pro-communist, pro-Kim Il-sung, that was immediately gotten rid of by the American government and crushed. And instead, the dictator Syngman Rhee would be put into South Korea. What would follow would be a civil war, essentially. North Koreans would try to liberate their country from the unpopularly imposed South Korean government that was made up of mostly Korean collaborators to the unpopular Japanese colonial rule. Syngman Rhee and everybody within this cabinet helped Japan rule Korea when it was under Japanese occupation. South Korea would, in order to foment its rule, have to have like very heavy suppression of people, such as the Jeju Island uprisings, where it would kill hundreds of thousands of guerrillas. It would regularly jail people that were pro-North Korean or unification. And so really the way that the war has been contextualized is wrong within American media. North Korea was just simply trying to unite its country again. In fact, South Korea attacked and had a lot of border skirmishes with North Korea before they quote-unquote invaded, which, you can't really call it an invasion. The war would be absolutely destructive to North Korea. Over 20% of North Korea's population would be killed. 90% of Pyongyang would be destroyed, the buildings in Pyongyang. And it is a scar that I don't think North Korean society has really healed from. We're going to be referring to North Korea as the DPRK or North Korea. Just to be, for comfortability of speaking, I'll call it North Korea occasionally. But the DPRK is the preferred name amongst communists. And two really good sources you can check out for learning about the DPRK, the Korean War, are the Blowback podcast. Their season 3 is about the Korean War, and it's really well researched. And also Patriots and Traitors, which is a book by Stephen Goans. Do you have anything to add, Revolutionaryth0t?
Nope. I actually feel like I learned a lot from that, because I don't know a ton about the DPRK, aside from the fact that the U.S. killed like 20% of their population and wiped out like 80% of their infrastructure during the Korean War. So, like, yeah, of course they hate the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's get right into it. Yeah, you really need that context when you're watching this cartoon. So, Squirrel and Hedgehog. One thing I've always found fascinating about children's media is that it's always introduces, especially like young kids' media, it always sort of reflects the society that's producing it. Like it's sort of the purest form and virtues that we want to teach our children. And so, in America, our kids will watch about like George Washington and, how great he was and, none of the slavery and stuff like that. Squirrel and Hedgehog, do you want to summarize the first episode? And just like some of the characters, Revolutionary Thought?
Yeah, okay, I'll do my best. I feel like my memory is not that great, but
I'll help you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so there's squirrels that represent the DPRK, and then they're they're basically preparing for the weasels to commit some fuckery, and the Soviet Union representing Bear, Uncle Bear, right, who represents the Soviet Union, is like, no, don't worry, guys, I'll protect you.
Yeah.
So then he gets poisoned by some mice.
Yeah. So in episode 1, Squirrel and Hedgehog, there's really all the countries are introduced as like races of animals. The North Koreans are squirrels. Bear is the Soviet Union, and he's sort of the protector of them. Weasels are the American army, which is so fucking funny. That creative choice just had me fucking like lolling the whole time. And then hedgehogs, which are China. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the hedgehog at one point, one of the hedgehogs is like, hey, we need to work together and like prepare our village or town or whatever they're in for an invasion by the weasels. And Uncle Bear is like, no, you don't need to do that. You just need me to protect you until he gets poisoned by some mice. And one of the squirrels is like, I can't believe we trusted this drunkard. Which, okay, I see the shade. The shade against people. It's fine. It's fine. But then the squirrels and the hedgehogs basically start to work together to defeat the weasels and have to just get their shit together real fast to get that done. And they go on some reconnaissance missions. And yeah, what else did they do in episode 1? Basically about it, right?
Yeah. It pretty much it's setting up the countries, and then the war begins, and they have a little bit of a skirmishes, and the DPRK barely survives and comes out on top, but weasels definitely have infiltrated their territory, is how I would describe it. I think one of the things that really fascinated me about the Squirrel and Hedgehog is how critical they were of the Soviet Union. I think the real main message of episode 1 is that you can't even trust the Soviet Union to some extent, because the Soviet Union, first of all, as Uncle Bear, protects the squirrels, which is obviously the DPRK, from the weasels. He warns them back the fuck off multiple times, but immediately he gets tricked by the weasels into becoming drunk and falling asleep, and then the weasels are able to invade. And so it's a very critical cartoon of the Soviet Union and of Russian people in general, right? It basically called Revolutionary Thought as a Russian, a drunkard. So there's that.
I don't even drink. How dare they? Yeah, but it is really interesting how it has that message of like, you can't rely on an external force that you believe to be stronger than you, because they might just get bamboozled by some mice giving them alcohol or whatever. Like they might be sabotaged, and then you'll be left all alone. You need to build your forces internally.
Yeah. What main virtues or like values do you think that this cartoon is trying to teach the children of Korea that are watching this?
I mean, definitely teamwork. Definitely not like relying on outsiders and just trying to. I mean, they rely on the hedgehogs, which I guess
is China.
You said you're supposed to represent China. Yeah, so, but if you're going to be working with someone, it needs to be reciprocal, and you need to collectively be working towards the same goal rather than having some outsider come in and be like, hey, I'm going to do this for you, and this is going to help you. When, like, really, it probably won't.
Yeah, and I
like with Uncle Bear.
Absolutely. absolutely. No, go ahead. Were you going to say something else?
Um, I think just, I mean, they also just seem to really value teamwork and working towards a common goal. Oh, there's also ducks that create a bridge at one point, and the weasels start crossing it. The ducks make a bridge so
Out of
that
their
the
bodies.
hedgehog and the
Yeah.
squirrel can cross it. Yeah, out of their bodies. And then as the weasels are crossing it, they're like, haha, we're actually ducks, and like fly apart, and the weasels all fall into the water. And that's really cool. Like, it really just shows us the virtues of teamwork and working together, because together we are stronger than one single strong individual. I think that's actually one of the things they say at one point, is that like together as weak individuals, we make a stronger collective than like one strong person.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely hints towards a communal aspect, and I think one thing that I noticed was just how beautiful Korea is depicted in this cartoon. It really shows how the North Koreans envision their own land, and like as this war is raging on, there's in the first episode there's not really tanks, but as there's guns, this show is surprisingly brutal. There's guns and there's fights. And there's even a couple on-screen deaths. I don't think there were that many in the first episode. Do you?
No, I think they were mostly in the second episode. Yeah.
Episode. But as they're like,
It's brutal.
yeah. As there's fires raging on, there's a war raging on. The backgrounds are absolutely fucking beautiful, and it shows like a virtue to North Korean or the children of Korea, Juche Korea, or the DPRK, just how worth defending their land is against this incurring army. And also, of course, that communalism. I think one thing that really shines through is that Juche ideology of self-reliance, right? Juche is so focused on, obviously it's socialism, so you have to work together as a team, but that Korea has to go out on alone, this both Chernobyl idea and this Juche idea of self-reliance. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to second that. It's so beautiful. Like, it's just such a beautiful cartoon, and the music is really nice. There's really like beautiful songs. It's just very like aesthetically pleasing, despite all the brutality that happens. And it's not even like that brutal, like compared to a lot of American media. Although, yeah, at one point there is a squirrel that snaps a mouse's neck with his own helmet.
Yes.
That's pretty brutal.
Yes.
But also, like, I think the fact that they don't shy away from showing that brutality makes sense.
Yeah. And while we were watching it, I said, as much as I'm being a Karen about all this violence, and the violence is, I mean, the way that the characters die is so fucking insane. Like, they will literally spaz. Oh, I'm sorry. That they will literally shake and like rigor mortis. They will literally. You could see like the life. Just you can see the life leave the animal's eyes, and when they're hit in the head, and their bodies go limp, and then rigor mortis. It's insane. But
Yeah.
I will say, I was saying while watching it, like, as much as I'm being a Karen about this violence, I think for a children in the DPRK watching this on their TV, they're probably thinking, fuck yeah, I wish I could do that to Americans, like, I'd love to do that to America. Like, it's such a beautiful revenge fantasy almost. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like, I bet they just think it's so badass, and they're like, yeah, you go, squirrel.
Yeah.
Snap that mouse's neck.
Do you think as an allegory it works, having all these as a good way to teach history, having all these countries be represented as animals, or does it get sort of confusing?
I mean, I feel like it's confusing for me, but I'm also not a child in the DPRK. Like, it's initially confusing because I have to like think extra about who it's representing. I mean, like, I feel like you literally have to tell me who each like species of animal was representing. But I feel like for kids in the DPRK, like this, they probably get it, I imagine, because I feel like they're probably taught a lot about their own history. I assume when they're pretty young. Like, I feel like they have like universal literacy, they're probably pretty smart over there.
Yeah, Yeah, they're probably, of course, you know, one thing we have to just caveat here with a huge fucking caveat is we're not Korean. This is an Indian and a Russian talking about a show in the DPRK. So a lot of cultural intricacies are lost on us in Squirrel and Hedgehog. But I will say it is kind of, it's such a great teaching tool. Like, I wish like we could teach history here like that, you know. And there have been attempts before. Like, there's been animes where all the countries in World War II have been represented as people, but they have not been done tastefully whatsoever. And I think they sort of do it tastefully here. If you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I agree. The best we got here is Hamilton, and that's like not even close to representing history accurately.
Yeah, I think, you know, comparing this to American cartoons, things like that. Well, American cartoons, you know, what they try to teach kids is, and all cartoons try to teach kids, you know, basic things like the alphabet, how to read, how to write, and how to be a good citizen, right? I think every single country, when giving their children media, is trying to teach them to be the best citizen possible, the most idealized citizen possible, which is why I think analyzing media as a way to just analyze greater society is such a great way to do it. I think in American media, though, a lot of times, like, for example, I work within a school district, and we were showing our kids Paul Bunyan, Disney's Paul Bunyan cartoon, and what's left out of that is a lot of genocide, right? Paul Bunyan is in an empty frontier. There's no indigenous people, and he's building America and civilization. And they literally say civilization in that cartoon. And it's completely empty. The land that he's walking into is empty. There's no indigenous people. There's no nothing. And so in the state building exercise that they're teaching our children, it's that Americans walked into an empty wilderness and built civilization, which I think is both ahistorical, but also talks to the values that we're trying to teach our children. If you have anything else to add.
It's just like very, that sounds like very like typical settler colonial mythology. Like, there was no one here, and then we developed this land and built civilization with our own bare hands by pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. Like, that's I don't know what Paul Bunyan is, but that's kind of what that sounds like.
Absolutely.
That's the vibe it's giving off based on your description.
Absolutely. If there's any, is there any examples from your own childhood, like American cartoons that you want to talk about, like how they influence how you thought about the world, or like things like that?
I watched a lot of like Soviet cartoons as a kid, actually, and I feel like looking back on those even today, like one of my favorites is Revolutionaryth0t, or Mystery of the Third Planet. And that's about this girl named Alice who's going on like space adventures with her dad and like a pilot. And I feel like that one has so many great messages. I mean, one of which is, this was made in like the 70s, I think. So it's like, the main character is literally a girl scientist, like a 12-year-old girl scientist, or she's like 7, actually. I don't know. She's really young. And yeah, it's also all about like teamwork and camaraderie. And there's this one guy that's super negative, and like every single interaction he has where he's like, oh, everything's just terrible. Oh, I hate it. Like, everyone's like, no, like, it's fine. It's gonna be fine. And it's just very positive and tries to be so uplifting. And it's like, even though this guy is super negative and like thinks that this adventure is gonna go awry, or thinks that everyone like hates him or something, people are still like, no, we're going to treat you with kindness, and we're going to uplift you, and we're going to work towards a common goal together, even though you're clearly like depressed or whatever, which I think is very interesting, because I feel like in a lot of American cartoons and just American media in general, especially for children, people tend to have really antagonistic relationships with each other. Like, that's something that I really don't like about a lot of American media, is that it's not about coming together and working towards a common goal as a team. It's more about like the interpersonal dynamics that cause antagonisms between people.
Yeah,
and like solving those antagonisms. But I don't love that.
It's I'm so sorry for cutting you off, but it's a lot of drama, and it sort of reflects the individualism of our culture. Whereas I think cultures outside of the West are a lot more collectivist, especially Asian society, Korean society. You know, they have a lot more of a collectivist past, and there's a lot less. I think a lot of American cartoons sort of reflect the selfishness of our society. If you would
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
And-
Yeah. And even,
No,
oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I watched a DPRK short film called like The Wind Bell or something, and that was really interesting. It's like only 12 minutes also, and it's basically about this like monument where a bell falls off, and this kid accidentally takes the bell to like back with him and his mom to their town, which is like a train ride away. And she realizes that this happened as they're meeting with the husband. And she's like, oh no, this is terrible. He's like desecrated a monument. We need to bring it back. And then like, it's all about their adventure going back to this monument to bring back this wind bell. And like the moral of the story is basically that you need to protect your national landmarks and like love your land and love your people and all of that. And I feel like for someone in the US, it would very much read as like, oh, this is propaganda, but like all media is propaganda. And I think it's just because we are so used to such individualistic perspectives on like everything that it wouldn't even occur to us to like create a short film about like, oh, I accidentally fucked up and like stole something from a national monument. Let me bring it back. And that's the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the thing is like, saying that like U.S. media is individualistic or whatever doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. Like I absolutely fucking enjoy all of this shit, you know, that I'm talking about. Like I love, for example, like the Jerry Seinfeld show, and Jerry Seinfeld is a raging Zionist, but you know, when I'm thinking about American children's cartoons, the most influential ones, it's always focused on an individual. Like in Squirrel and Hedgehog, there's not really a main character. You could sort of say like we're constantly there are a couple, you could sort of say, focused characters, but we're always like skirting around like this side, that side, what's going on here, what's going on there. Whereas, you know, in American cartoons, we have main characters, and a lot of the main characters in our shows are fucking assholes, fucking selfish, fucking psychopaths. I think the one that stands out to me the most is the Gen Z classic, Greg Heffley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's written from his perspective. Everything about that not cartoon, but book series and the movies, and eventually I think a cartoon movie, but I haven't seen that. But he presents himself as so well and nice, but if you really look at him, he's a fucking asshole. He's a sociopath. He's absolutely treats Heffley awfully. Have you consumed any Diary of a Wimpy Kid media of Revolutionary Thought?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
I have not.
Okay, so for anybody who knows this, I think like Greg Heffley perfectly encapsulates sort of the American spirit, though. You know, be an asshole, tell yourself that, and then rewrite history and in his diary to be the good guy. I mean, it's insane, and of course it's played out for comedy, and I absolutely love Diary of a Wimpy Kid. But one thing I love about Squirrel and Hedgehog is how based on the community it is. One thing that definitely shines through about that show is that Squirrel and Hedgehog is that the DPRK is a very militaristic society, and I think for an outsider watching this who's not entrenched within this culture, I think that comes off as a little bit scary. How would the militarism came up to you, Revolutionary Thought?
Well, I think for me it makes sense given like the context that you provided at the beginning about how like the U.S. wiped out 20% of the DPRK's population, 80% of their infrastructure. So of course they would be militarized and be carrying around guns. Like even from in the very beginning, there's squirrels that are carrying around guns and like hedgehogs with their helmets and all that. So I think it makes sense. But yeah, I feel like for someone who doesn't have that context, that they watched it, they'd just be like, oh my God, why are they so violent over there? Even though like I'm sure, I mean, I don't know if the DPRK has this, but like as I was telling you earlier, in the Soviet Union, they had like military and war preparation classes where kids would learn how to assemble and use guns. And my parents like loved those classes. It's really funny. My mom's always like, I was the best at putting together guns. I'm sure you were, Mom. I'm sure you were. But like, I'm sure there's something similar-ish in the DPRK. Like, don't quote me on this, but it would make sense if there is something similar. Just because they've had to become militarized and just to defend themselves from outside threats, like the United States, which is like the strongest and richest country on earth. So like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. I think what the show really represents is the sense of fear, right? The people of the DPRK, the squirrels, are just trying to live peacefully, and there's just this onslaught, and they have to protect their beautiful land, and the land is beautiful. And it really speaks to a lot of the messages of what DPRK society is built on. It is scary to live in the DPRK, right? South Korea is just basically, you're surrounded by South Korea, which is a glorified military base that's a sort of a puppet client state of America and does military practices on your border every single year, launches missiles. And American statesmen know that the people of North Korea, the DPRK, have been traumatized, that they still live with that scar of the Korean War. And so they launched these missiles on purpose to continue to scare the people of North Korea. You're surrounded by Japan, which is also a close ally of America and a former colonial power of yours, and, used to do horrible things to you, comfort women, which were sexual slaves of Koreans that the Japanese would have. And in fact, some American soldiers also enjoyed comfort women. And you're the only safety you really have in that show. The only ally you really have in that show is the China, which is represented by the hedgehogs. And China gave great sacrifices in the Korean War. Mao Zedong's own son died in a blast in the Korean War defending Korea, not China, but Korea. And Mao Zedong was absolutely torn up about it, but he still sent his son to die to defend the Korean Revolution. And the show is, of course, very heavily critical of Russians, as represented by Big Brother Bear, or Uncle Bear. It was Uncle Bear, right?
Uncle Bear, yeah.
Yeah. And the show is very, very critical about Uncle Bear, who is very sort of presented as, what's the word? Rambunctious? No, overconfident. Would you say overconfident?
Yeah, very overconfident, and like he just has his strength and his brawn, and that's really it. Like, and he's all talk despite that.
Yeah.
Because he can't even protect them in the end.
Absolutely. But I think that does speak to how the Soviet Union interacted with the Korean War, which was as limited interaction as possible. It was really China that saved the Korean Revolution. And so I think it is a militaristic cartoon, and it is trying to imbue a lot of militaristic virtues within the Korean people and Korean children very early on. But I think it's a militaristic out of necessity, and you can sort of see the desperation in the squirrels as they're trying to protect their homeland from the fucking American weasels, the bastards.
Yeah.
And it speaks very true to like what happened in history and what's currently happening constantly. And so I don't really condemn them for being militaristic. I do know that there is a mandatory military service within Korean society. So, and it's funny how that is presented within Western media, whereas Israel's IDF's, which has gone to war multiple times, killed multiple innocent people, their mandatory military service is treated as completely normal.
It's the fucking hypocrisy.
Absolutely. Is there anything you want to add on before we move on to episode 2 about episode 1?
Let me think. I think, did the Soviet Union also have mandatory military service? I think it did, as long as you weren't like in grad school or something, which I think is how my dad was able to not go into it.
I have no clue. Really you're the Russian here. You should tell me.
Oh my God, right? No, I should know. I think so, but don't quote me on this. Okay. But I'm pretty sure they had that. And it makes sense. I think, but doesn't like South Korea also have mandatory military service?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. I think it's
treated as good.
I feel like yeah, like the West really loves to frame like normal things that socialist countries do that other countries also do as like absurd and weird. And like, how could they do this? How could they have mandatory military service? I mean, ignore Israel, ignore South Korea that also have those, but it's weird when the DPRK does it.
Yeah, but they'll also defend it like, oh my God, they have to. Israel has to protect itself from those, mongrel Palestinians, or like, South
Yeah.
Korea has to protect itself from North Koreans. Like, any good study of history, North Korea is not the aggressor whatsoever. It's the victim of both America and the Korean Japanese collaborators in the Korean government.
Yeah, and that's like the vibe that this show even gives off. It's like these squirrels don't want to fight. They want to chill. They want to rely on this Uncle Bear, but they have to, like get it together and militarize real fast and strategize and do all the things,
Yeah, if the squirrel people,
despite the fact that they'd rather just be chilling.
yeah, if the squirrel people are to survive. Um, I posited this in the while we were watching, but do you think representing like different nations as animals is problematic in any way? Like, could it be like racially problematic, or do you think it's fine? I think it's done very tastefully.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it's done well. And yeah, like I see no problems with it, honestly. And I think representing Russia as or the Soviet Union as a bear is a little on the nose, but what are you gonna do?
There definitely was a little bit of, okay, making the Soviet Union a drunkard, and a drunkard who's so drunk that he can't even protect the squirrels while the weasels are invading. I think that was a little on the nose with Eastern European stereotypes, but we have our token Russian here, and as long as they say it's okay, I think it's okay. North Korea, the DPRK can say that they have a Russian friend who said it's okay.
Yeah.
Also, I will say one more thing. Be careful searching up squirrel and hedgehog on Google, because there's a lot of furry fan art of it. And just know what you're getting into. But moving on to the second episode. So the war starts continuing heavier, and the weasels start allying with rats. And we were sort of debating about what the rats represented. I couldn't decide if it was Japan or South Korea. What do you think?
I don't know. Because I think like one of the main defining features of the rats is that they have this accent where they stutter. So but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it could be either like Koreans who, were Japanese collaborators. Like that could be it. Like they're like rats like that, or it could be like the Japanese colonialists who are bastards. I think that allegory was lost on me as an outsider of DPRK society. I think we can just chalk it up to that, right? That the allegory is lost.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
We're just stupid Americans.
fucking DPRK children with their universal education, and 99%
with their like
grades.
near literacy rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're really good at playing music too.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I was just watching like Billy and Mandy and like Cartoon Network, and that's my education. But so the war starts raging on, and there's a lot of fucking brutal deaths in this episode. Like we mentioned before, a rat, literally the squirrels pull the helmet over a rat's head and like snap his neck. One time, I believe a weasel gets his neck snapped. One of them gets his neck snapped. A spy is caught, and he's blank out shot. Like it gets very, very brutal. But I imagine for the
Oh yeah, someone throws a knife. I think the hedgehog throws a knife through a mouse's ears, and then just like slams him on the ground.
it bodies him and fucking smacks him in the head, and get like makes him fucking have body spasms. Like it's
Yeah.
I think for like the 6-year-old DPRK children watching this is like the coolest shit ever, like
Yeah.
they're looking around at like the scars of their society, like what Americans did to them, and they're like, yeah, I wanna fucking do that to an American right now.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either. So the weasels, in collaboration with the rats, who we couldn't really figure out who they are, dig an underground tunnel system to the DPRK and start spying on them. But immediately the soldiers of the DPRK discover the tunnel systems after killing the mouse with that brutal ear thing with a spike through the ear, like good fucking lord. And they infiltrate the tunnel system and they find targets. There's also a little bit of a subplot where somebody from the DPRK gets kidnapped, interrogated, which is a very real thing that happened within the South Korea. Prisons would just be full of political prisoners that the regime deemed dangerous, and sometimes they wouldn't even be communist, and they would be tortured in the most horrible ways. There's actually a very funny story. There's an American general. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a little side tangent here, if it's okay with you, Revolutionary Thought.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So there was an American general who was captured by the DPRK army, and he was brought into questioning, and him and the DPRK general disagreed on a lot of things. And so the DPRK general told the American general, there's a lot of things you don't understand about the world. Do you know why? And the American general said, no, I don't know why. Like, why are you guys fighting? Why are you guys doing this? Like, as far as Americans understood, they couldn't understand why the people of North Korea were fighting, right? It was very hard for them to understand. They used like very Orientalist propaganda that they just hated freedom. And so the DPRK general says, I've seen you before. Do you know where I saw you before? And the American general says, no. And he says, one time you were going through a prison in South Korea, and I was one of the prisoners there, and you looked me dead in the eye. Well, now I've escaped and I'm fighting for my country, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know exactly, but that's such a fucking cold line.
God damn.
And it just sort of explains, the reason I'm mentioning this is it sort of explains like the tenacity of the people of the DPRK and just their will to fight at the hands of absolute destruction. Like, again, 90% of their buildings are destroyed, 20% of their people were killed. The people of the DPRK were literally forced to live underground like mole people. They had to dig extensive underground tunnels because of how much bombing was done by America. More bombs dropped than in all of World War II onto a tiny little area of a peninsula that was cut in half artificially. But what did you think about episode 2? How did you think about, this brutality, this war, how it went thematically?
I mean, how dare it end on a cliffhanger? Because now I feel like I have to watch more.
Oh, could you explain the cliffhanger, actually?
Yeah. Can I? Oh my God. Do I even remember what happened? I swear, dude, I have like brain damage or something. But I think oh, okay. I remember now. So one of the hedgehogs gets captured by a weasel, and then the squirrel is going to meet up with this hedgehog who was captured by the weasel, but the weasel is in the tree. That's their meeting point. And he gets captured, ... Who knows what happens after. But I assume they make it out.
Most likely.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So he had like, I'm asking you to summarize because I was a little bit lost. Like, did he have like important military information? The guy who got captured at the end of the weasel? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the squirrel that, like, basically at one point he goes down into these underground tunnels that these mice are patrolling, and then goes and captures one of the weasels, or like tries to capture one of the weasels, or like tries to threaten him, but then the weasel runs away, and the squirrels, I think, find the string that was leading out of the tunnels to where the hedgehog was. And yeah, I don't know. There's just like a lot of stuff going on in this episode of once that I feel like it's like almost hard to keep track of.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in these episodes. One thing I will say is I love how much they pay attention to detail. Like when the hedgehogs have been in an area, the weasels will check the leaves to see holes in the leaves left by the hedgehogs' spikes, because hedgehogs in real life have spikes. And also, one thing I think I forgot to mention is the hedgehogs in this show, they roll around like Sonic. Which is so fucking funny. Like, I think I made a joke while we were watching that the DPRK invented Sonic before Sonic was a thing.
Yeah,
that was funny. But yeah, I thought this episode overall was great. It's so fucking cool to see just these very cute Disney-esque animals. Like it's animated in a Disney style. Like what would you say the style is animated in? Like what would you say would be a best parallel in like Western shows?
Western shows. Like almost like I guess the closest would be like Don Bluth films, like American Tail and like All Dogs Go to Heaven. That was him, right? Like
Yeah.
where it's just all animals, or I mean, like the main characters are animals. Do I even like remember what the plot of All Dogs Go to Heaven was about? Okay, American Tail, where like it's all just a bunch of mice.
Yeah, I'd say the style is very similar to Don Bluth films, and then I can see like a little bit of Disney in there.
Yeah, and also like I said, it reminds me of Soviet cartoons, just because it's so like the backgrounds are so beautiful. I mean, also I feel like the backgrounds are even like higher fidelity and higher quality than some Soviet cartoons that I love.
Yeah. Did you notice any themes that were similar to Soviet cartoons and any themes that were different? Like how different and similar were they to the Soviet cartoons you grew up watching? Because you were born
I feel like with
in the collapsed Soviet Union.
yeah, yes, I was. Yeah. So I would say that like a major theme in pretty much all Soviet cartoons is like working together towards a common goal, like struggling together. And I think that was, I mean, as we discussed earlier, like a huge theme of this DPRK cartoon. I mean, I think like one of the lines in it was even like as long as you like something about like struggling together, like it's important to struggle together and like fight against your enemies and all that. So I think that's a really common theme, but I feel like, I mean, like a really common theme in Soviet cartoons too, but I feel like in Soviet cartoons, they're usually less like violent. Like one of my favorites is Bremianski and Muzikante, or Brementown Musicians. And the plot is basically there's these traveling musicians and they go to this town where this king rules, and the king is like goofy and no one likes him. And the main musician falls in love with the king's daughter, so they like take her with them, and or I guess that's like the end. They like eventually she ends up with them, and the king tries to get her back in like the second part and whatever. But like the violence isn't really violence; it's just implied. Like they scare some bandits along the way, and then they also scare the king so that they can distract him, so they can go get his daughter out of there because she wants to get out. Like it's consensual too. They're not just like kidnapping this girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like a lot of the violence in Soviet cartoons is either like not there or implied. I guess in Time that that I talked about earlier, where they're like going on space adventures, there's also some violence and guns, but it's mostly against robots. So, but I guess they're all pretty bloodless. Technically, it's not like they're super bloody cartoons, any of them, like not even the DPRK one. I feel like I just like rambled about nothing for a while. Let's see if I can get back to a train of thought.
No, that was great. I loved hearing it. If you want to continue, go ahead. I'm just giving you some encouragement.
Oh yeah. Oh, thanks, I need it. Yeah, like I feel like teamwork is just literally like the biggest theme, like teamwork and like picking a struggle to fight against and defending your land. I mean,
Soviet
like,
cartoons are Korean in this one.
In this one.
Yeah, okay.
In Soviet cartoons, I feel like there's a lot less like we need to defend our land, which is really interesting because they did have to defend their land against the Nazis. But that was also like 20, 30 years prior to the time that the Soviet cartoons that I watch were made. So I guess that makes sense that it wasn't like a theme in the public consciousness as much. Because I'm sure if there's, I don't know, are there any Soviet cartoons about fighting the Nazis? There probably are. I don't know. I haven't seen like every Soviet cartoon ever, so I can only go off of what I know, you know?
Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but I believe the Soviet animation industry wasn't really developed until Khrushchev came into power. So I don't think.
I think so. I think you're right.
Yes. I don't think there's many Stalin hated cartoons. You know, Stalin was Stalin was an asshole dad. That's all I can say. I think the biggest parallel I can make is are you familiar with Happy Tree Friends?
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest, like, these very like cute animals killing each other in like horrible ways, but I think the main difference is that Happy Tree Friends was gore for the sake of gore, right? You know, the Happy Tree Friends are
Yeah.
these like very cute. And if you haven't seen Happy Tree Friends ever and you don't know what I'm talking about, go into YouTube right now, search up Happy Tree Friends, and just watch like 1 or 2 minutes of it. Don't watch the whole thing. It's terrible. It was such a stupid.
Yeah.
It was so stupid that I used to
Yeah.
watch that when I was like 13 or 14. Like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. But
Yeah, even though like all it is just like violence,
yeah,
animals experiencing violence and brutally dying. And that's it. They're not even like fighting for a cause or anything.
exactly. The biggest difference is Happy Tree Friends is just animals dying in gory ways for no reason whatsoever. But in Squirrel and Hedgehog, it's for a very good reason. It's for protecting this beautiful land from this oncoming imperialist army that is the weasels. And I think depicting Americans as weasels, especially within, well, first of all, just in the world context in general, like we are thieving imperialist bastards that destroy places. But I think depicting them in the Korean context is just such a great analogy. I will also say that it's not that gory, right? There's no blood or anything.
Yeah.
It's gory and not gory at the same time. It's I would not mind my, say, like 11-year-old nephew watching a Squirrel and Hedgehog. I would mind him watching Happy Tree Friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though I feel like when I was 12, I definitely watched Happy Tree Friends and like way gorier stuff than this.
Was Happy Tree Friends out when you were 12?
I think so. Okay, let me check now.
Because you're old as hell. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Old as hell. Yeah, it debuted on December 24th, 1999. So like it's also old as hell. It's older than you. Happy Tree Friends is older than you.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'll shut up now. Okay.
Wow, that's so wild. And it apparently it was released from 1999 to 2023, September 27, 2023. So that means like a year ago. Wow. It like fully ended a year ago. That's so weird that it had such a long ass run, even though all it is just like violence for violence's sake.
Yeah, what was the entertainment value? I don't understand. I think the message of Squirrel and Hedgehog is very admirable, though. It's all these nations, you know, China and all these participants in society, you know, I think a lot of the animals represent classes in society, like the squirrels and the ducks. There's a couple animals that are on the side of the Koreans. A lot of them are slipping in my mind, but the two big ones are the squirrels and the ducks. They're all coming together to fight to defend this beautiful land. I think that's such a beautiful message, and they're all there's sort of this message involved that we as all the nations can come together to fight for a better world. I think that is like an overall message in this and a world that's worth defending for. I think that's such a beautiful message encapsulated in this. You know, like obviously there is like a little bit of poking and made fun of other races, like Russians or drunkards, you know. But I think at the end of the day, it's this idea that we can all join together to defeat the stupid fucking American imperialists. If you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I agree that it's a great message. I mean, I feel like you already said all the things about the message. Yeah, agree.
Yeah. How did you feel about episode 2 though overall? Was it good? Was it bad? Like, what would you have changed? Like, would you have, is it perfect? What? How did you feel about the plot?
I think it's good. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was just a lot of moving parts, and it's like hard to keep track of like everything that's going on. But maybe I just need to watch it again. I don't know, and I probably will. Honestly, like I'm probably gonna watch more of this because it's so cute, and I love cartoons. Especially like this one where like you said, like the message is so good because yeah, like I feel like so much, like there's so little Western media that's all about like, oh, we're gonna come together and struggle towards a common goal and the work to defeat our enemies.
And
Like that's so
there's so little
rare.
Western media that depicts America as weasels, which I think it rightfully should be.
Right? Yeah. So much Western media is like America's the best.
Yeah,
And I mean that makes a lot of sense with the whole like military entertainment complex stuff that we have here.
yeah, yeah. And I think one thing about Western media is that a lot of the main characters are often very entrenched within the upper middle class, and they live like a very consumerist lifestyle. Like, and that sort of represents like the ideals of American society, like people who have made it in the American dream. You could sort of say
Yeah.
in Hedgehog and Squirrel. I think one thing that's really refreshing is that there's almost no buildings. It's all almost nature. You know, it's untapped nature. Like the only person who lives in a house is Bear, Uncle Bear, from what I remember.
Yeah. And like I think there's like a meeting in a house at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like usually they're just out in nature, out with the trees and the beautiful birches, which for some reason I like didn't think the DPRK had birches, but it makes sense geographically because Russia has a lot of birches.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's
So
no.
I thought that was a fun fact.
I mean, the tree, the seeds would just go right over. You know.
Yeah.
I I think it also speaks to like North Korea is a beautiful country. I mean, the DPRK has like just absolutely beautiful flora and fauna and a lot of parks. So I think it does actually represent Korea well. But I think a lot of American shows are afraid to be quiet, you know. And there's moments in this cartoon where there's just like a little bit of admiration for nature, you know. And I think American cartoons are so zany, in your face, constantly distracted. Like it's ADHD brained, you know, is what I'll say. Like brain.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I think this one holds your attention span well. If you want to add anything.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I feel like the pacing is really good. It just flows really well, and it's not like in your face action, violence, whatever. And yeah, I guess adding on to the point about how there is like cartoon violence in it, like I feel like it doesn't glorify violence though. It's not like they're like, oh yeah, it's so cool to like kill people. Like they're doing it because they have to, not because they want to. Like you can
Yeah.
tell that like these squirrels, if they could, they would just chill. They would just hang out in nature and like enjoy and appreciate their land, but they can't. So they have to fight back. They have no choice. Whereas, yeah, like I feel like a lot of like fucking Happy Tree Friend, like a lot of Western and particularly US media is just like, yeah, action. We're doing badass violent things just because it's cool. Oh my God. You know what cartoon just came into my mind? Johnny Bravo. Like that is a weird ass cartoon because like literally the premise of it is like, oh, there's this guy and he like hits on women and is like weird. And it's just a dude, bro.
Do not diss Johnny Bravo. Johnny Bravo is an Indian classic. It was huge in India. Every single Indian kid
Really?
loved it. Yeah, yeah. But
So funny.
yeah, yeah. But like given our given India's problems with like rape culture, I think there might have been hitting on a cultural nerve in India. That's a deeper conversation that I don't think Revolutionary Thought is comfortable with. But
Yeah,
no.
that makes sense. Oh, damn.
Yeah. Actually, for a little while, it was a trend to call other kids Johnny Bravo. Like that was like a cool guy, you know. It was you to call it became like a phrase like a cool guy. He's like a Johnny Bravo. Like you know,
Funny because I feel like when I think of Johnny Bravo, I don't think cool guy. I think of like I want this man to leave me alone. If I met a dude like that in real life, you know.
I think a lot of Indian men do consider themselves Johnny Bravos, and a lot of women also feel that way. So it's definitely a gender divide. This is a conversation that's completely different.
This is like a huge tangent. Okay, so back to Squirrel and Hedgehog.
Yeah. Do you consider Squirrel and Hedgehog to be an anime though?
I don't know, like what makes something an anime? Because I guess like is the Boondocks an anime? Because it's an anime style, but it's American.
Yeah, I mean the broadest definition of anime is cartoon produced in Asia, but it's definitely not. It more so gets Disney vibes to me, like or as you were saying, Don Bluth. But Don Bluth
Yeah.
is rarely in nature. You know, like it's almost like if Bambi and Don Bluth films had a baby, and it was set
Yes.
during Saving Private Ryan. I think that's like the
Yes.
best way I could describe it.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I've never seen Saving Private Ryan, but yeah, sounds about right.
Sounds about right. I've never seen Saving Private Ryan either. So that was completely out of
Don't
my
really watch
house.
movies.
That was completely out of my house.
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't watch movies, so you know, I'll just agree.
You should.
Like, yeah, that sounds like a movie.
But yeah, no, it's the show is very enjoyable to watch. I think, the only thing that I'd say is confusing is you can't really tell who's who sometimes. You know, like who the fuck are the ducks?
Yeah,
Who the fuck are the rats? Like I know who Brusha's the bear, squirrels are the DPRK, but like and then hedgehog is China as far as I can tell. Like that is just my artistic interpretation. And it makes sense given the history, but like some of these animals make no sense to me. And the other thing I'll say is a lot of the designs blend in together, like the weasels and the rats and the moles and the they've all got tails and they're furry and they've got, you know, it's hard to tell which race is fighting who sometimes.
especially because it's so dark at times. Like literally, like because some of the fighting and stuff takes place at night. So you're like, what is happening? It's too dark. I can't see. Like I see that there's a tail, but whose tail is it? And yeah, like pretty much all the squirrels look alike, all the hedgehogs look alike. So a lot of the characters also, it's like hard to tell which squirrel is which squirrel and which hedgehog is which hedgehog. And the weasels are basically interchangeable. Like I don't even know if the weasels have names really.
Yeah, yeah. The main characters have names, but they're also so easily interchangeable. I think that might speak to more of the collectivist culture than like our obviously so individualized Western culture, where like the main characters are these very zany and also very individuals. I think
Yeah.
in a more collectivized cultural construct, you know, like this seems mean to say because the connotations of these words are but I don't want these to come off as mean, so you know, obviously, but everybody's sort of interchangeable with each other, is what I would say for the squirrels. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like I agree, but let me think.
I can
try
come
to
up.
find the right words for it.
Yeah. It's very hard to
Yeah,
find the right word for it.
like I feel like what they're trying to get us to like think about and consider is the impact of all the squirrels and all the hedgehogs like as a unit fighting together towards a common goal, rather than like, oh, look at this like badass like squirrel character, like this one squirrel that's so cool and has like blue hair or something, like an anime, like how you can always tell who the main character is because everyone's got normal colored hair, but then the main character has a weird hair color or something.
Here's what I'll say. It's part of a whole. Like nobody is an individual. We're all part of a bigger whole, is how the cartoon is, or mass movie.
Yeah, like they're all interconnected and like interdependent.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful. I think also there's during the ending song for the second or first episode, it's slipping my mind. They say something along the lines of, "Together, if you fight, we are invincible." Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that. A sense of invincibility, I think, speaks to like how, I mean, fuck, man, America tried to wipe off the DPRK off the fucking map, like, and it got very close to it. The DPRK still remains strong after all these years, you know, being completely sanctioned. It's one of the most sanctioned countries on earth. It's a country that was almost completely destroyed during the Korean War, and America has threatened to invade it several times. It's surrounded on all sides, and yet it still stands fucking strong, still stands for its people, and still stands for liberation. I mean, I think you should feel invincible if you're a Korean.
Right? Yeah. Like I feel like them being proud of who they are as a people and like the fact that they've been able to ward off such a strong enemy just with their like combined strength and by working together towards a common goal. Like, yeah, it totally makes sense that they would feel invincible and strong and be proud of that.
Was that present in any Russian media or Soviet media that you consumed as a child?
Hmm.
That
Let me
feeling
think.
invincibility?
No. I'm thinking.
Or
I feel like I,
no, go ahead.
I, as a kid, I basically just hyper focused on like 3 cartoons that I watched all the time. I feel like a lot of Soviet media is focused specifically on friendship. I feel like this is answering your question from way before about like common themes in Soviet media versus DPRK media. But I think it's focused specifically on like friendship and like solidarity more so than like defeating an enemy. Because there's one cartoon that's really popular that I used to watch and I still do, called Простоквашино, which is just the name of a place, so the translation is the same to English. And that's all about this kid that like meets a cat, and then his mom won't let him keep the cat, so he moves to a village in the middle of nowhere with this cat, and then they pick up a dog friend along the way and like a bird friend that they teach how to talk. And like it's literally just about this kid living independently with these animals. And it's like a series too. Like there's a few there's a few episodes. And at the end of the first episode, what's really interesting is that throughout the entire episode, there's this mailman who keeps coming to their door and being like, "Hey, whose kid are you? Why are you even here?" And the kid's like, "I'm my own kid. What do you mean?" Um, and he's just an asshole. And then at the end, he gets a bike. And he's like, "Oh my God, I was so mean because I didn't have a bike. And now that I have this bike and I can deliver my mail more efficiently, I can be nicer." I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then, like, they took away a systemic barrier and now he's just a better person because he's better off. That makes so much sense. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's just specifically about friendship rather than like there's no enemies, there's no like antagonist other than really like the mailman kind of.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I feel like Soviet cartoons are just really like mostly about friendship. There's also another one called Vartu, which is like they're in the port, and it's about like a bunch of friends of different nationalities coming together in this port and singing together, and that
Yeah.
one's really cute.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that I think that's wonderful. I think if this show was made in America, Squirrel and Hedgehog, it would be about one specific hedgehog. Maybe he's got like a racially diverse cast of different token minority characters that are sort of like played off for like racial, right? Like a lot of stereotypes. Basically, like you've got the like
Yeah.
annoying girl character, and you've got like the cool black character. You know, I'm just
And then you just have like a token gay guy.
gay guy.
reason.
No, it's basically the Hey Arnold cast, and though there's no gay guy in the Hey Arnold cast. And it would be all about how he's like fighting the evil Count Weasel, right? And it's just this one villain, and it's just Count Weasel. And once he defeats Count Weasel, the world gets into this like prosperous, beautiful things, and everything wrong with the world goes away, right?
You just reached the end of history. Yeah, it's so liberal
You
the
know,
way that like American media is framed.
yeah,
But that totally is how they would do it.
yeah, and I think it's important that we talk about the differences between these, because I think the way that the liberals view the world is through Marvel Avengers thinking, right? Like we're the good guy,
Yeah.
we're Tony Stark, and or like I don't know, fucking who's Tony Stark's villain? Who's Tony Stark's villain?
I
I don't fucking know. I don't fucking
I
know.
don't even know. I
It's
haven't
been a while.
seen Iron Man.
You've never seen Iron Man? Oh my gosh. Okay. We're Spider-Man, and the North Korea is the Green Goblin, and we gotta spread our
Yeah.
good values to North Korea, and we gotta web our way to the bad guy. And it's just like in Squirrel and Hedgehog, and just like in reality, like as according to a Marxist analysis, there are no fucking good guys. There are no fucking bad guys. You're all just states operating in accordance to their own material needs. And America's material need is that it's an imperialist, finance monopoly capitalist, late stage capitalist society that needs to take over and kill and maim and, you know, extract as many resources and impoverish as many countries as it can. And that's its conflict with the DPRK, is that the DPRK has a lot of vital mineral resources and also stands as a counter hegemon to America's unipolar grip on the world. And so I think when the DPRK is media like Squirrel and Hedgehog, it's like this very collectivist fight against and in defense of your own resources. I mean, like, what are the resources in this society? It's this beautiful ass fucking forest. And when the weasels come, they burn down everything. And, you know, if we're watching what's happening in the world right now, that's what American imperialist armies do. I mean, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, even in Palestine, you know, they're destroying these very beautiful things for their own selfish needs. And so I think getting away from that good guy, bad guy thinking and just towards just people existing and systems existing, where like even if you kill a couple weasels, or even if you kill Commander Weasel, and I don't know if that happens. We only watched the first 2 episodes of this show for time's sake. I mean, I would have loved to sit down and watch like the whole fucking series with you, which spans multiple decades in one sitting.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That would take so long, though.
That would take so long. That would take months. Even if you kill Commander Weasel, there's still going to be war because the system of capitalism still exists. And that's implied. Like, they kill like multiple weasels and there's still war coming. Like, there's still things happening because at the end of the day, you need to uproot a system, you know, base and superstructure before you actually get real change. In American cartoons, you get rid of the villain and it's wonderful, right? Like,
you have to defeat Voldemort, and then bam, everyone lives happily ever after, and Harry Potter becomes a cop.
And then Dobby is happy to be a slave. Like, and the bankers, the banker goblins are Jews. Like, you know, that's Harry Potter, right? You know, like that's
God, I'm so glad I was never like into Harry Potter as a child.
You know, the fucking banker goblins or elves or something are called like Goldstein or some like anti-Semitic shit. But
oh my God.
But like that perfectly captures like Western values, you know. And I'm not shaming anybody who my girlfriend's a communist. She loves Harry Potter, so you know. I mean, I'm not shaming anybody who gets enjoyment out of this, but you do have to recognize the issues with this series. And, you know, first of all, it's so fucking funny that J.K. Rowling, as anti-Semitic as she was in Harry Potter, is the biggest supporter of Israel. I mean, like, fucking go figure. But
right? No surprise there, though. And the turf.
Yeah, and a raging turf. But it speaks to Western values of, I'm a good guy, these are bad guys. If I get rid of the bad guy, the world's going to become beautiful. And this is the kind of thinking that got us Iraq and Afghanistan, this sort of egomaniac main character thinking of the universe. And I just don't think that's present in the DPRK's Squirrel and Hedgehog whatsoever. If you have anything.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. I feel like a Western brain rot, like the idea that like, I'm a good person, I'm a good guy. That means I can do anything. And regardless of how inhumane and vile and fucked up the shit I do is, that's fine because I'm the good guy. I'm the good person. I mean, it's also like a very like white supremacist construct. I feel like. I mean, I don't feel like I've seen people say that. Yeah.
Oh.
Where like if you think that you are just by default the good person just because there's some like innate goodness, like innate good quality about you, then you'll never be able to admit when you're doing fucked up and like terrible things. And I feel like that's where so many Westerners are and where so much Western media is, where like, yeah, like Harry Potter can do anything. He can, like, I don't know, I feel like in the 4th book or something, he fat shames Dudley or whatever his name is, but it's fine because Harry's a good guy. So, you know, you can make fun of someone for being fat or whatever, and it's good. That's good because you're a good guy.
Yeah.
And it's just such a like silly way of viewing the world. Like it is like where it is just your innate goodness as an individual that makes you good and not your actions and what you actually do.
Absolutely. And just this simplified view of the world, the good guy, bad guy. And, good guys are always good. And it's this character that they're almost sort of born with. And I think that does speak to that white supremacy that you were talking about, that whiteness, westernness. You know, it's this character that's inherent to it. It's good, and we see that like played out with Israeli propaganda right now, like as it does a terrorist attack against Hezbollah with pagers, where they made pagers explode. It's okay.
And they got a whole bunch of civilians too.
Yeah, civilians killed.
Which, like, they never mentioned in the fucking media.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Media.
It's okay because Israel is a good guy and these terrorists are bad guys. And every single Zionist talking point is sort of just built off of this. I'm Peter Parker. I'm Harry Potter. You know, I'm what do you call it? You know, I'm the children of light. You know, as Netanyahu said, or like,
Yeah.
I'm Luke.
I was literally just thinking that.
Yeah, and I'm Luke Skywalker. And these are the children of dark. You know, this is Darth Vader. You know, the Palestinians are Darth Vader, and Hezbollah is Darth Vader, and they, you know, they're who's the main villain in Harry Potter? Voldemort, right?
Yeah, Voldemort.
And you know, it's just this insane, stupid fucking view of the world, and I don't think that's present in Squirrel and the Hedgehog at all. In Squirrel and the Hedgehog, it's good fucking God. Oh my God, get the guns. We're being invaded. You know, it's from a perspective that I think is never really shown because we've never been invaded in Western society on this level.
Yeah. And yet, I feel like in Western society, we are taught that, like, oh, we need the military to be out in the Middle East because they're defending our national security, because otherwise we will be invaded, even though, like, no one's invaded the U.S. Like, what are people worried about? That's not going to happen.
Or
Like, what
even...
are you worried about? That people are going to do to you what you do to them?
Yeah. And if you could keep on distracting the audience while I search up for something super quick, I would appreciate it. So go ahead and talk right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, geez. Okay. Squirrel and Hedgehog. I mean, it's just, like, despite all the violence, it's a very cute and wholesome cartoon, I feel like. I mean, especially because of, like, the beautiful nature, the beautiful scenery, the songs, the music is really nice. Also, interesting thing about Uncle Bear, when he started singing, I was like, because he starts singing and you don't see him on screen until, like, a little bit into his song. I was like, this sounds like a Soviet. This sounds Russian. And lo and behold, it's Uncle Bear. So I know that was, like, a really interesting stylistic choice, how they were able to, like, incorporate that. I don't know enough about the other cultures to comment on whether they did that with them too. But
was it Korean with a Russian accent, or was he singing in Russian?
I think it was Korean with a Russian accent, but I also don't know what Korean, like, I can't, like, pick out Korean. You know, I don't speak Korean, so I don't know. I can't tell if there's an accent or not. But probably, like, just, like...
Are you fluent in Russian at all? You know, we've been friends for a while, but I've never asked this. Most of our messages are usually about, like, pussy or something stupid like that. Like,
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, we're just, like, shit posts incarnate.
Yeah.
I speak Russian. Am I fluent? Probably not. If you threw me into Russia, I would probably become fluent pretty quickly. Like, I take Russian classes every week.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say, and what I was getting you to distract them from, is in Squirrel and Hedgehog, you know, there's a bad guy and there's a good guy. Or no, there's not a bad guy and a good guy, but there's an invading force and an defending force, and it's very rooted in history, right? It's very rooted in a real invasion that happened by Americans onto Korean society. Whereas American media often has to invent an enemy, it has to invent an invasion. And in the 2013 film Olympus Has Fallen, which I saw while high with my cousin, North Korea invades and bombs the White House. And I think that is so...
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fucking hilarious film. I highly recommend you watch it. They have, like, random Asian actors, and I'm pretty sure, like, 99% of them aren't even Korean. It's horribly Orientalist and everything. But the thing is, Squirrel and Hedgehog speaks to, like, a really real invasion, and it speaks to a society that has already been in apocalypse, right? You know, whenever we're watching American films about The Last of Us or, like, these apocalypse films, the Americans' worst nightmares within apocalypse films are just what we have done unto other people in the world, like The Last of Us or Olympus Has Fallen is happening right now in Gaza, right? So I think when we're watching this media, it's so important to remember that Squirrel and Hedgehog is based in reality, and ours is based in this grandizing white supremacist sort of illusion. And that's what I'll say.
Yeah, like so much of Western media is just, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, like just rooted in that like settler colonial, like white supremacist mythology of like, we are the chosen people sent to this empty land and we will protect it
Yeah,
against
and the enemy wants to attack us.
people who are, this enemy wants to attack us because they're so threatened by how great we are or something.
I think the only piece of American media that gets down to like how evil the American empire is, and I don't even know if it's purposeful, but it most likely is Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you've ever seen that,
Yes, I've seen all of that. Yeah,
you've seen
all of the like animated series. Yeah,
who gives a fuck about the movies or the live action?
I think those. Yeah, I mean, I refuse to watch those.
Yeah, but
maybe one day if I want to like torture myself, but
the Fire Nation and Avatar: The Last Airbender came out around the Iraq War, Afghanistan wars. It's such a good plug-in for America and what it was doing to the Iraqi and Afghani people. I don't know if that part was intentional, but and it also shows the enemy in a complex way where the enemy is fallible and the enemy has internal politics and the enemy is human. The Fire Nation people. I think that's one thing that Squirrel and the Hedgehog lacks, and I don't want them to show. I mean, I don't think they should show Americans as anything but like these weasels that hate them. But it does speak to like how much lacking we are in nuance and just a well-rounded worldview in American media, where Avatar: The Last Airbender, a cartoon show on Nickelodeon, which is a classic, which is amazing, is probably the best commentary on American militarism than fucking multi-million-dollar movies, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's because the military-industrial complex is like, oh, you're gonna like make movies about the U.S. military? Well, you need the Department of Defense's approval, so.
Yeah.
And then you can rent our fighter jets or whatever.
Yeah. There's a military base nearby my house, and it was such a big, not my house, my hometown, not just my house specifically, like my hometown. And there was such a big uproar, not uproar, but like everybody was so excited that Marvel was filming a Marvel movie nearby our hometown's military base. Like, oh my God, and I was, it was, what movie it was? You know what movie it was? Guess what? Which one it was? Miss Marvel.
The Avengers.
No, Miss Marvel. The most fucking forgettable, shittiest one imaginable. And our military base gave them like special access and everything to film that pile of dog shit. Like, what you gonna do? Yeah, but wrapping this up, I think this is an absolutely excellent cartoon, and it really does help highlight the differences between American and Korean culture, and the people who have faced genocide and are surviving and invincible from it. Face the worst apocalypses that we watch for entertainment, that we enact onto the other people of the world. Like The Last of Us happened in North Korea. The Last of Us is happening in Gaza. It's happened in Iraq and Vietnam, like things like that. Any closing words?
Oh,
wait. Tell me what you think about the series. Tell me what you think about this. I'm so sorry. I'm having a brain fart.
Oh, yeah, I think it's good. I mean, like I said, I would totally watch more of this. Like, I think it's really well done. I think, like we were talking about, like, it just paints everything in such a nuanced way. And yeah, like, it's not like, oh, there's these forces of good versus evil. It's like, no, like, we are defending our land as a team, working together against these invaders who are just trying to like destroy us for no reason because they want, or not for no reason, but because they want to, engage in imperialism and take our resources and extract from our beautiful land, and we need to work together to defend it. And it's just very like aesthetically beautiful. Like, I feel like even if someone isn't into like socialism and like the DPRK, I feel like they could still enjoy this just from an artistic perspective, just because of how aesthetically beautiful it is. And yeah, and also each episode is like 20 minutes. Yeah. And the music is really good.
The music is so good. Revolutionary Thought. thank you so much for being on. Tell the people where they can best find you, and if you have any closing statements about, if you have any closing statements.
You can find me on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram as Revolutionary0t, like THOT, but with a 0 on the T. And do I have any closing thoughts? Yeah, everyone go watch this cartoon. It's so cute.
Squirrel and a Hedgehog.
So it's really good.
Free on YouTube. Deaths to America. Long live Juche Korea. May Korea be united one day under the Juche banner. Thank you so much, Revolutionary0t. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
This episode of the Pokepreet Pod has been brought to you by our generous members on our Patreon. If you'd like to become one of them, go to patreon.com/thepokepreetpod. Thank you.
What the fuck? Glory to Stalin, I barely made it.